Good morning.
Good morning, Kristy. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good, good.
We
I
just
sent you a
had
note.
a,
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I just say we just had a storm blow through. I think it's headed towards all of you.
Oh no, but there was a bit of like some drizzle going on this morning, but we've had some chunks of rain here. That's for sure.
Yeah, we had a good amount of hail this morning.
Ooh, fun. Yay. Well, I'm going to make you a co-host too, just again, in case I always get paranoid. One time I lost power during an I-1 session. Um, so just in case, we'll keep going because you'll be here.
Okay.
And then do you want me to share for your slides or is that easier?
No, I will
Share.
I will go ahead and share just so it's not the annoying and next and
Yes.
next.
Yes. I know there's some people who I feel like when they present, they're like, it's too much to share and talk. So I like to share for them so they can just focus on talking. And other people are like, yeah, but then it messes up my flow if I can't click. So whatever works for you.
Yep.
I'll do a quick kickoff then. I'll give folks here because I see a lot of people kind of coming in here today. Oh yeah, Jennifer, I know. Here we go. Kristy said there's a storm coming, and I'm sure it will come for us and all of our internet here. Fingers crossed, not, um, but yes, I'll give thank you all for joining. I know we had a lot of folks registered for today, so I'm going to give it just a minute or two here, and then I'll kick off with some intros as more folks kind of come in, and then turn it over to you, Kristy.
Sounds good.
Is it Volesky?
Yes. Yep.
Volesky.
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 Hi there.
College
Hi,
App,
Margaret. Welcome.
College Match. I'm Tiffany, and I'm going to be your matchmaker along this process. Finding love.
And I might, if I mute you, it's just for the audio. I know people are sometimes on phone and computer. You're not like muted forever. You can always unmute yourself. Just, the joys of Zoom. All right, why don't I kick us off so we really have this full hour here. I know more folks are going to kind of be coming in, but welcome everyone. This is our first I-WIN session of the new school year, which is very exciting. I see a lot of new faces on here, which is always exciting. I'm Heather Penzak. I'm the Director of Innovation and Implementation with Education System Center. We work in all things career pathways, college and career pathways, but one of my focus areas is within work-based learning. We launched I-WIN back in October of 2020. So we're going on about 3 years now of I-WIN sessions and really robust conversations and collaboration with communities among Illinois all throughout, but also we have national partners come on and join for sessions and present for sessions. And today we have another state coming on to talk to us a bit about their data collection processes, and also those essential elements of work-based learning and really where they're really working with communities throughout the state to have that high quality, really great experience for students, for partners, for schools, all the things. So would love to, again, just who's here today, use the chat, introduce yourself, but always like to start out if there are questions, kind of things top of mind for you. I know data and work-based learning is a constant thing we're all kind of wondering about and trying to think more about. So for our presenter here today, if you have kind of some top of mind questions with data and work-based learning, I'm sure they're going to answer them just kind of naturally, but they can also have those kind of top of mind for them as well as they're going through their content today to really get to your questions. And we'll have time for Q&A as well. As I mentioned before, if I ever mute you, it's really just for sound and making sure everybody can hear, but go ahead and please mute anything, but also do know that we'll use the chat, ask questions all throughout. We'll also very much have time for that question and answer for you to unmute, ask the weedy thing that you're not quite sure how to put into words. I know sometimes my questions can be a bit rambly and I'm not quite sure how to say them succinctly in the chat, so I like to wait when I can go off mute. Promise we'll have time for that. But again, introduce any questions that you have, please go ahead and put those in the chat here. As you're doing that, those of you who might be new to I-WIN today, we really are, the Illinois Work-Based Learning Innovation Network. We are here to highlight and explore those innovative models for work-based learning. So we have state definitions for work-based learning, but we really do want to go beyond that, right? What is that high quality? What are all those moving pieces? And so that's where we'll have, presenters from other states talking about their initiatives and their models. We'll have communities within Illinois sharing about a specific thing like career exploration or team-based challenges or internships in health sciences. So we have a lot of those different conversations. But I think one of the coolest parts are just the connections that happen. I know I hear all the time that people were private chatting someone and then they started talking to them and now they've gotten all their resources and they weren't even the presenter. They were just an attendee that they kind of matched up with through this. But it really is thinking about that high quality piece. It's also very much thinking about that access piece. You can check a box, but how do you really actually engage in work-based learning that's high quality, high value, and is getting to the students who wouldn't have that access otherwise without their schools, their systems, their partners, really creating those and recruiting and supporting them intentionally. And then in here too, we have questions, we have challenges that come up as we have these discussions. And so we start thinking, what are some of those things we need to identify, kind of lift up as some policy changes or supports within our state, which again, always fun today to hear from another state and be like, what are they doing over there that we could do here potentially, especially being a neighbor very close to us. And so again, here, when we talk about work-based learning within IWIN, and this is the last thing I'll say and move on here to our presenter, is we're talking about the whole continuum, right? So we're not talking about just apprenticeships or internships. We're talking about that whole experience for a young person and where they're going to move from career awareness into those more intensive experiences and where the host, that employer partner, that industry expert, right? They start becoming more of the person engaging directly with that young person. The managing organization, which, a school or a community-based partner, their role is always still there, but it starts to diminish a bit as that mentor, that industry person really becomes the person driving and engaging with that young person in work-based learning. So all that to say, to set some context as I see new faces, I'm going to stop sharing and turn it over to our fabulous presenter here, Kristy Volesky from the Iowa Department of Education.
Thank you, Heather. Yes, so my name is Kristy Volesky. I work at the Iowa Department of Education and I oversee all work-based learning for schools and colleges in our state. So everything from technical assistance to making sure data reporting, accountability pieces, as well as the sustainable pieces to make sure that we're making progress as a state. But I also do want to point out that I have many other roles that I play. So I have really tried to make sure that this is meaningful for you. So bridging in those national pieces. So I also am a part of the ACTE's National Work-Based Learning Policy team, and I serve in the bylaws committee, but I'm also leading efforts for mentoring for coordinators across the nation. I'm also actively engaged in the Career Z Challenge as a facilitator, and I'm also doing a national masterclass keynote on work-based learning and sustainability for Kevin Fleming's Catapult PD. So everything I'm presenting to you today has some elements that we've done in Iowa, but I really want them to be considered applicable to you because we have some things in common, especially some of your places across the state look like Iowa, but you definitely have some areas that do look considerably different, and some of your larger populations are considerably larger than our larger communities. So recognizing that there's differences, but I definitely see that there's consistencies and where we can meet on those components, and I will be bridging that with national information. Prior to joining this role at the state, I spent 16 years as a business teacher and a work-based learning coordinator. Specifically, as a work-based learning coordinator, I transformed a program that used to be a credit recovery, go work at a job and get credits, to an internship program that truly changed lives through a series of different connections for students. So with that, I wanted to get that in before I have the screen share. And Heather, just kind of shout at me if I need to check the chat, because I do struggle to check the chat while I am presenting. So
I've got you on the chat.
Thank you. Okay, so starting out, let's talk about what the value of work-based learning is. You're all here for a specific reason because you do see value in work-based learning. One of the key things that we're doing is bringing awareness to students that these different careers exist. We know that students, the adults in the students' lives, help determine the connections that students have to careers. And there's ample research associated with this. We cannot rely solely on the students, adults in their lives to help understand and make those connections. So bringing awareness to careers, making sure we're making those connections, and that continuum is key. With that comes social capital. Students have limited social capital and connections, and our disadvantaged youth have social capital connections to typically other disadvantaged populations. Not always, but we want to help students break out of that. We also recognize that there's some situations where it appears that the student would have a lot of adults in their lives, have all these connections, but maybe it's been predetermined and it's not actually of interest to the student. Again, that brings the value of awareness, making those connections to help students understand what it is they like, where they want to go, and how they can potentially get there. And we can bridge that through connections, not articulating what they need to do, but again, making those key connections. We're also developing out ample student skills, both professional skills or employability skills and technical skills, so that students feel prepared and ready to take opportunities, so they're not limited to those part-time jobs that they have access to. And lastly, when it comes to authentic learning, being able to validate you as an educator, what you are doing in your classroom has value. It is directly tied and connected to what is valuable in the industry. So when we make those definite connections, it articulates the value of the learning. It's followed up with the application and those connections and building out a student's network. These are all very much interconnected. And there's a couple of resources I have at the end where you can read some of the research involved related to how important it is that work-based learning bridge all of these pieces together for our students. I wanted to make sure I'm pulling from something that you recognize. So I saw your continuum is a little bit different, Heather, but I was pulling this from your Illinois Department of Education. And I specifically highlighted some key words here that I think will help tie back into the message I'm going to send to you today. So within this definition, engage and interact with industry experts. That means that we're not isolating ourselves and removing that connection. We're actually purposely interacting with our industry experts. Learning is taking place. You're an expert with learning while allowing students to demonstrate those skills. All of these are really important when it comes to the full continuum on making sure we're preparing students to have exposure and opportunities and then make informed decisions. We may say students go all the way through the continuum, or we may see them go a little bit and then go back and try something different. And that's perfectly okay. Having lots of on-ramps and off-ramps is really important for our students. I'm going to connect this one up to the U.S. Department of Ed's toolkit framework, because there's a lot of confusing definitions out there. And depending on, I'm sure you've noticed this, depending on who's put out the definition, they have personal goals in mind. But I'm going to keep ours focused on education and learning because we are in education. So the U.S. Department of Ed has created this framework, and this aligns directly with the definition I just showed you. Alignment of classroom and workplace learning, meaning what they're learning in the classroom is directly tied and connected to business and industry. We're allowing that opportunity to apply those skills. Notice it says in a work setting. It doesn't say at a work. So making sure we're understanding there's lots of different interpretations and opportunities on what this can look like so we can meet students where they're at. And then the last one is support from classroom or workplace mentors. The key thing here, and if you dive into this one on their website, it actually focuses a lot on how important that partnership is, that we're working together and not in silos. And if you think about that a little bit, if you're running a school-based enterprise, a school store, would you really want to never talk to an expert to tell you, hey, this is kind of the secret ingredient, or this is the best way to do it? So making sure, again, we're bridging those connections is key. Okay, so I'm going to make an offer here to simplify work-based learning because I think it's incredibly complex. And this has been a big push that I have been having, not only locally, but also nationally, to kind of tie in all those pieces because it gets incredibly confusing. Even if you read the Perkins definition, what does this mean? It means sustained interactions, but then there's all these other potential other things. So let's simplify this to really propel progress. 3 essential elements. The first one being academic preparation. We are making sure that before the experience occurs, students have some sort of learning in place. Not rocket science. This is you. This is the value that you offer. You are the expert in this particular topic. You are providing the opportunities before the experience occurs to make sure that the experience is an enhancement piece. The partnership. We have both education and industry working together. Depending on where we're at on the continuum, and I loved what Heather showed you there, we'll have different levels of engagement. But the thing is, if we do everything in isolation in education, that's a great educational learning experiences. And those are essential, but that's not work-based learning. If we just have something in industry, student working a part-time job, that's just called working. That's not work-based learning. We need both parties coming together to make sure we're developing an experience that's meaningful and students are learning. And the last piece here is academic follow-up. There's a lot of research really pushing through and emerging about career guidance and the lack of career guidance. And this doesn't have to be as complicated as we think. We've traditionally, some of us have often thought that it has to be a counselor, and the counselor knows all the careers and all the things, but we know that the ratios of counselors to students are too high. So there's actually ongoing research of there's little things that we can all do in our comfort zone to make a big impact. And this academic follow-up is literally just asking students to pause and think, what does this mean for me? What will I do from here? Do I maybe go down this path and take a different course? Did this validate that I'm really interested in this? Do I go and do this experience or this other course? It's really important that we have this follow-up of some sort, and it doesn't have to be complicated. It can be as simple as a think, pair, share. Turn to a partner, share something you enjoyed or something that you learned, or it can be more complex if you want it to be. So to really kind of illustrate this, I have a couple of sample pictures of real events here, but I'm going to use the bottom one, for example. This was a small group of students, a class that got to go to the local fire station and learn about firefighting. They had their paper slips, they signed them, they went to the fire station, they got to talk to the chief, firefighters, got to climb on the fire truck, see the station, got to try on the full uniform to understand the weight, talk about training, if they're interested, here's what they need to do, typical pay, great. What are the chances that one of those students would feel comfortable saying, I think I'm going to go into this? Maybe a small bit. Is it within their social capital? Do they have some other connection? Do they really feel comfortable based off of that situation to make the next step? Or is that just a great day to get out of school? Take that same experience and let's talk about how we can transform that into something of high quality while making it really meaningful and purposeful. What if before the students went, they spent some time talking about, here's how you make a great first impression. This is how you introduce yourself. Look person in the eye, smile, shake their hand. Let's practice shaking hands. The expectation is when we go to this fire station, every single one of you is going to introduce yourself to every adult that we encounter. And it's not going to be awkward because we're all doing it. When that actually happens at the fire station, what is going to be the reaction of the business, the fire chief, those who are there? It's going to be a very different interaction, right? They've already set the stage for, they're wanting something more from this. Now, we could have taken that preparation to be a deeper dive into the firefighting field, or we could even do a cross-reference of how firefighting and EMS is very similar and often they're cross-trained and what are the differences, so that when we're learning at the site, it's a deeper dive into the actual content, not just the surface level. This is the pay range, this is the degree required, right? And that academic follow-up after the event could be, could you see yourself doing this? Maybe it's scan a QR code it collects simple response to that. Very different experience, very purposeful and intentional. There's a greater chance that out of that experience, taking the time to shake the hand and introduce yourself will probably lead to an offer for, do you want to come and do a job shadow? Do you want to learn more about this? Can I follow up and do something else with your class? It's a very different experience because it shows that we're both working together and we both really care. How much extra time did we have to put in to make that a different experience? Not a lot, but it does take some time to pause and make that transition. Okay, let's take this for example. This is a mannequin, by the way. That's not a real person, but this is a real event. Again, imagine that nothing was done except we're going to try out the medical field. You're going to be gone for the day. Make sure your teachers know about it. We're going, getting on the bus, and we're going to go do this simulation. There's a series of different simulations you can try. Great experience, a great way to introduce. If you can't handle this, putting a needle into a mannequin, you probably should think about a different career path related to the medical field, right? But imagine if there had been some sort of preparation activity done ahead of time. What if we had learned more about understanding when you would do this, what the purpose was, how it changes the outcomes of the patients, what proportion of a nurse's role is actually this piece of it, what else are they doing? And then when we're at the experience, it's more than actually doing the hands-on piece, but getting feedback from the nurse. Why do you love your job? What are the other great things that you get to do? What are the other outcomes related to this because we were able to administer this medicine? That follow-up could be, again, think, pair, share, maybe even as simple as this is what I want to know, or maybe it's putting a sticky note on a board. I have additional questions. I'm interested in learning this, whatever the prompt is. Again, doesn't have to be extraordinary or complex, or it could be if you want it to be. But again, just taking the time to really make it purposeful and intentional to really bring this to be a great experience. Okay, and one more application here. Build My Future is not unique to Iowa. This actually happens across the nation, focused on the trades. It's a really large hands-on event where they get to try out different types of careers. This one is to kind of mimic alignment, but it's also to understand heights and if you're okay with that. But they get to try out all different types of career activities. We met back in May because this event needs to change. And this event needs to change in the fact that we need to be more intentional about preparing kids ahead of time. A lot of the students didn't have any preparation ahead of time. They came and did the activities, but what's the result? How many of them are going to say, gosh, I want to go into this career, or I want to go follow up and do another work-based learning experience, or I want to take more courses in this pathway, or I'm going to go ahead and sign up to do an apprenticeship with this company? Not a lot. And it's because we didn't set the stage for students to really have this intentional interaction to really create those potential connections and future experiences. So again, instead of just a great day off where we got to skip class and do all these fun things, what if we did something similar like I explained before? Talking about first impressions, how to introduce yourself. Maybe the expectation is you need to introduce yourself to at least 4 different businesses while you're there. You can try out all these activities, but I want you to introduce yourself to 4 and find some way to hold students accountable for that. This event is done in partnership with educators at the local level, regional level, and state level, along with our different business partners to make sure that we've created an educational experience. This is not a set up your booth, have your squishy toys, cross your fingers and hope kids pick something up. This is expected that we're creating experiences that are hands-on to mimic what the career is like so that students have the opportunity to engage with a lot of different careers related to the trades. So this was developed in tandem with both individuals. The last part here is the academic follow-up is maybe if we were talking about first impressions ahead of time, maybe the expectation is that you have bring home business cards or bring back business cards, or you have to do like a scavenger hunt to indicate that you've done these different things or interacted. Another preparation piece that you could have done with a different follow-up they list all the businesses ahead of time. Maybe students have to research 1 or 2 different businesses and the career opportunities related to 1 or 2 of them. And then they have to have a conversation with that particular business. They can go in pairs, they can, however that helps students feel comfortable, but that type of preparation is really focused on a career path. And then our follow-up would be, would you be interested in doing more with this? Or did you like this career? Or what did you like about this career? Again, intentional, just really ensuring that we're preparing students or providing opportunity for them to really take away something from the event. So at this point in time, I want to just kind of pause. I've been doing a lot of talking here. Think about what I was just talking about with preparation, partnership, and follow-up. And how could that really transform and impact your community? How your businesses engage with your schools and your colleges, and vice versa. And then what I'd like you to do is to put in the chat for a moment here. What's the preventing piece from being able to implement this? So let's go ahead and put in the chat. What would be your barrier to implementing these 3 essential pieces to transform the work-based learning experiences in your community? Making quality business partner connections, which is usually associated with time, right? Having the time to go out and to explain and to develop those and support them. Yep. Accessibility of businesses. Yep. Yep. Oh, Kristen, I'm going to get to that in just a bit here about 1 or 2 people in charge of all of it. Yep. Yep. Once you can get one business to have a great experience, generally they talk to other businesses and it's easier to propel that forward. So finding the time and the support to be able to develop out, at least to get started, is really important. The other piece of that is making sure it's a quality experience. Businesses have routinely provided me with feedback that they just don't know how to interact with kids. They don't know what to do. They need guidance. They need, like, you do this and so on. And we've actually adjusted a lot of our toolkits where we give those prompts for educators to be like, and tell your businesses they need to do this. And not that they have to do it verbatim like that, but it does provide the framework so that businesses feel more confident and comfortable. Yep. Yep. Mind shift, that does take time. Yeah. Okay. Great. Thank you for putting that all in the chat. And we might be able to come back and talk about this a little bit more. But I want to make sure I can talk about the data piece too, because I know Heather really wanted me to share on data. So if you want to still add some stuff in the chat, we can definitely talk about that and come back to that at the end. Okay, so as I mentioned, the other piece we're going to talk about is data, and fully recognize that my data collection at the state level is very different than your data collection, but I really want to make sure I am translating this into how you can do what you can do within your realm. So what's within kind of your locus of control, so to speak, and your power of influence, because you're not at the state level. So with data collection, kind of the same way I started the other one, the reason why we care about data collection is it really is communicating, it generates interest, showcases the experiences, and the value you place on it. It is really the PR associated with what you're doing. We do a great job of creating great opportunities, but it is takes time to really explain that and communicate that out. But that is just as important, because that will actually save you time in the long run, the more that people know about what it is that you're doing. When we were looking at how to collect data, so you're going to notice the 2021-22 school year versus last school year, dramatic difference in the data. And the way that we have approached collecting data is I wanted to make sure We were already collecting data for work-based learning with Perkins 5, but I didn't want to create more of a burden on the educator or the school, whoever was reporting it, or add one more report that they have to do to the list. So how do we streamline in a way that makes sense and it's actually valuable, valid data? So we took a look at the work-based learning experiences and we decided to use SCED codes. There are national SCED codes out there. All the ones that end in 4.8 and 9.8 are related to work-based learning experiences, but they're also labeled work experiences. So then we also had to overcome that just because that's what the SCED code title is nationally, doesn't mean that's how you have to name your course. You can actually change and adjust the name of your course to better communicate out with the field. Because when the field hears work experience, they think just working. Well, that's nothing new. We've been doing that for over 100 years, right? We wanted something that's going to really change students' lives and improve their skill set. So last year we published the one on the left and schools panicked, but I assured them that was ground zero. That was just yeah, we're doing this. So please consider coding this particular way because we do have local control. So schools can elect to not do or participate in this. But as you can see, they really wanted to showcase their opportunities. So the data on the right here is much better. However, the data that will be out next year will honestly be the most accurate because this data on the right is showcasing the schools that saw the other one and changed their code during the year. But then we had lots of conversations about, well, yeah, you can create a school-based enterprise as a course and really be intentional about preparing students to understand the full operational piece of that and create standards and assessments associated with that. So we were talking about lots of different programming. Again, next year, we're going to see not a better participation rate, but a more accurate picture. So Heather, I did add this one to this presentation last minute just because I wanted to make sure I had that in the corner. So this is how we did it. The national SCED codes, and then we use keywords to distinguish the title differences. Work experience has a different perception than internship. People know what the word internship is or have a general idea, and it's different than just working a part-time job. So by using the keywords, we're able to convey to the community in a clear and concise way that this is the expectation for the course. And it was one where we didn't say, well, you have to say just as this is your title. I told the field, I don't care if you call it cardinal internship or senior internship or internship, but having that keyword in there allows me to do a VLOOKUP based off of the SCED code to decipher the difference between an internship, an apprenticeship, and maybe some of the ways that we don't want to recognize just work experience. We also created new codes to really identify school-based enterprises and then the courses that are a series of projects with businesses. We got tired of waiting for the National SCED Code Committee to add them, but good news, they saw our codes and decided they wanted to create national codes, which we have now aligned to the national codes. So these codes are available. The school-based enterprises end with 993, and then they wanted to call theirs career-based, project-based learning that end with 994. So now there's an even more diverse way to identify work-based learning courses that are applicable to all states across the nation. We also created state-specific codes this year to kind of fill in the gaps. I linked this one to pre-apprenticeship pathway. If you're interested in learning about that a little bit more, there was a story we had done on a school that piloted it. They found that there was a gap between finishing all of their industrial tech classes and then students who weren't quite ready to go fully into an apprenticeship. So they created a pre-apprenticeship pathway course. It was 3 weeks in electrical, 3 weeks in HVAC, and 3 weeks in plumbing. Monday through Thursday, they're learning through modules on VR headsets. On Fridays, they're actually doing it hands-on with a local business. In their pilot of 6 students, 5 of them have since, they're actually in the apprenticeship with the 2 of the businesses that they got to interact with. And the other one solidified that he actually wanted to go into heavy machinery. So he is now an apprentice with a heavy machinery company locally. They are going to be adding additional pathway courses. But here's the thing. The school didn't actually have to pay for the headsets. They were free. So in the article, it kind of talks about it's through a partnership with Meta and one of our state organizations related to the trades that actually organize that. And I know Tennessee is actually looking at how they can tap into that as well for their schools. So you can learn more on that link, a little bit about the story. And Heather, if you ever want to follow up with that, I can connect you with that person. The other one we took a look at was entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship in and of itself is not work-based learning, just talking about business plans and what to do, like things you have to do as a business owner is not work-based learning. But when you couple that with a series of projects with businesses, it actually is. So we have added that as another option outside of the national SCED codes. So that is an Iowa specific one, just to make sure we're propelling that approach to entrepreneurship, because it is better linked to actually positive outcomes with finding a mentor and feeling confident to start a business. So we added that one and are pushing that one a lot, especially in our rural communities, so that we can encourage students to want to stay or return back to their communities. The nice thing about the SCED codes is it's no additional reporting. You put the code in your system and it automatically takes care of itself, because through all the other reports that schools have to do to push out their data, we are able to, at the department, then pull that information. What this means for you, though, is if you are wanting to share that with your community, when you identify the courses, you can start to identify the opportunities and explain that. The other piece that we're looking at, that we're adding in as an option, and it's going to be a 4-year phase-in, is embedded work-based learning. So we have the work-based learning courses that are 100% of the course is centered around that work-based learning experience piece. Embedded means we are using it as an experience to enhance the classroom learning. So those examples I had gone through earlier. So it's just like a one-time experience, or maybe it's 2 times, but it's embedded so that all students have access. And the great thing is this creates equity, because we're no longer saying, well, if you have the transportation, the money, the time, and the connections, you get to participate in work-based learning. Instead, we're saying everybody in this class gets the experience. And we're going to provide all the support that is necessary to make sure that you have access to these opportunities. So how we're doing this is we said, let's just start taking inventory, because we know it's happening. And I could bet that you're doing it too, somewhere in your school. And when we collect inventory, finding out where it is happening and who is doing it. And guess what we found? It's happening and nobody's talking to each other. And it's like the same experience in 4 or 5 places. But it's all, some of the same students are doing that. And there's sometimes large pockets of students who aren't getting access to that experience, but it's creating local conversations. So we started with CTE because we do have some requirements for work-based learning in CTE in our state. But then it's also to expand out to the rest of the high school and then into middle school and eventually elementary. The next part of that is making sure it's quality. So it's not just doing it, but making sure we're doing it with integrity, with the intentionality that we need to help students make informed decisions. So making sure it includes those 3 essential elements that I talked about: preparation, partnership, and follow-up. And then we're tying it back to those district career and academic plans. Every state calls them something different, but it's an expansion on the 4-year plans. It's not just planning out your courses for high school. It's actually career development, looking at work-based learning experiences and so on. There's several different pieces that I know every state has a little bit different, but it's, again, helping support students to make informed decisions. And then we're identifying the experience with the course, not the section. And that's the message. If you have 3 sections of a course taught by 3 different teachers, and 2 of the sections have the work-based learning experience, but the one does not, we're asking you not to put it in, because it's not equitable. The students who are in that one course that don't get the experience, that's not fair. So making sure those conversations are happening and that all students have access to it with the course is what we're looking at. We do not want section level data. Each year it will automatically appear. So it's not, again, you have to do like thousands of identifiers each year. It's starting small and expanding. And then we've worked with Infinite Campus and Power School to allow the capability so that it automatically pulls that information up every year. Now, our goal at the state level is to be able to collect that information and share it out. Like, We have all these courses happening, but we're also having all these embedded experiences happening, and look at what students are getting throughout their K-12 experience. I mean, that's several years down the line, right? But you could be doing this at your district level. I don't know if you have Infinite Campus or Power School, but if they've already created that capability for schools in Iowa, I'm guessing you could do it as well. And this will help paint the picture for something that we have an initiative with counselors often for Portrait of a Graduate. Again, what are students having access to for their whole career? And that's great information. It helps us make informed decisions about where our gaps are and what we need to do next to make sure we're aligning with preparing students to the best of the ability to make sure they're successful after they graduate. Taking all this information together, I'm a big fan of simplify it. Let's not make it complex. So talking about moving forward, this is what we are doing as a state. And the next steps in this document is actually linked to the document, a version that you see over here. So not only is it a step, but it has a series of linked resources to help guide that step. The first step was taking inventory. Almost all of our schools took inventory this last year. A few did not, but those will be working on taking inventory because you got to know what you have before you can move forward. Then it's taking a look at those. So we started last May, but it will continue through this year, is making sure every experience is a quality experience. Before we start expanding, we got to make sure what we're doing is of quality so that we don't burn relationships with our local businesses. Because it's not surprising, right? Like if we have multiple duplicates within the school, we're also doing duplicate connections with businesses. So they're getting asked by like 7 different people from the district to do sometimes the same thing and sometimes different things. So making sure we're pausing and making sure what we have is quality before we start adding things to the docket. And then lastly is using a self-assessment tool to really advance quality work-based learning. And this is looking at several different essential components to ensure success. And one of the key things is you got to have a team. If this rests on the shoulder of one person, when that one person leaves, so does the experience. So it needs to be a team, and how the team is formed can look different in different schools and colleges, but making sure that we're using a team approach to increase communication, increase impact. Now, the self-assessment tool that's linked in this document is one that I have created for Iowa, and I have it's political in my role sometimes. So I had certain constraints when I was creating it, just meant to say, here's these different high-level topics to think about, and what do we want to focus on correcting next? Because you can't do everything. You have to work slowly. Find something, figure it out, look at your data, make your next decision. Are you missing a population of students? Are we not communicating out what this is? Do we really need to hone in on what quality is? Do we need to spend some time with professional development focusing on this so teachers have time to really develop these out? So it's encompassing a lot of different things, but that tool is best done in a team because there's so many pieces that are happening outside of one person in a district. And again, strengths and areas for growth, because just like a classroom, every school is and college is at different places. So making sure it's kind of meeting you where you're at. Hey, we're doing that well, but we need to work on this. It's meant to be self-guided so that everyone can feel empowered to make those decisions and movement on their own. And so lastly, here's my information at the Department of Ed, my email and my phone number. If you would like to connect with me on LinkedIn, some source links here, some 2 great articles that really just talk about how we bring things together. There's a lot of information in there, but when you read it and really reflect, it does come back to those 3 essential elements that we talked about to really create a quality experience and to provide that support that students need. And then I have a couple other links there in case you're interested. Okay, with that, I'm going to stop sharing because I talked a lot. What questions do you have about data, or are there other things that you want to talk about or ask me? Please feel free to come off mute.
Hi, I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
My name is Derletta Payton, and I'm from Valley View School District. And my question is really about these embedded work-based learning experiences. What were some of the more innovative or things that one might not think of right off the bat, like a school, based enterprise or something like that, that you found that schools or districts were doing?
Well, there are some things that we have said that should be courses instead of embedded experiences. But probably one of the best ones that I've seen is really taking a new approach to a career fair or a job fair. Businesses provide us the feedback that they didn't understand those when they're going down to a 5th grade classroom and no one's really talking to them, and I'm not hiring them. So schools who have really revamped those to be hands-on booths and trying out the activities, and some of them have decided to be really targeted. So healthcare is a tough one, getting students in a hospital type of setting for the really authentic piece. They still have limitations on what they can see. But if we do a healthcare related event where we can have different stations doing different pieces related to healthcare and exposing students to careers that they don't normally think about, like a phlebotomist. So those have been really innovative and really helpful in really moving the needle, as well as providing some local opportunities. Another one, we really kind of worked on revamping some of our language too, based on the feedback. People didn't like the word tour, even though that one is used pretty nationally. They thought it sounded too vacation-y. So, and we've seen a lot of inequities with job shadows, where schools are like, everyone does a job shadow, go find your own, and hopefully you have transportation and connections or feel comfortable, which are not equitable at all. So we did a combination. And that was the suggestion. And this has been really great and well received from not only the business community, but for education. So it's called like a worksite exploratory event, where it's like a group job shadow combined with a tour. So as part of that class, they go down to Main Street or they go to a business or two, and they split the students up in small groups of 3 to 5 students. And they do a rotation within the business. And then they get to see all different types of careers, which is another complaint from businesses. They have no idea that we have this career here. So it kind of overcame that. Students do a rotation. The educator or any additional staff are there to help provide the supports for any of the students who may need it. And then they learn about 3 to 5 different careers in an hour. And then they may go to another business either next door, or they may drive to another one, depending on how big of a day they want to make it. But in an hour, you can impact students with 3 to 5 different careers, and business can impact 20 to 25 students versus one day for one student in a job shadow. So I would say that's been another innovative piece that schools have been implementing as an embedded experience, and they're great for those introductory classes to really get a good idea of all the careers that are related. And again, super efficient.
Thank you. And also thank you for focusing on the equity aspect, which is really huge if we're really going to do this the right way. Thank you very much.
Yep.
I was doing the awkward pause to see if there's somebody else before I ask mine. I don't know. Adam, did you go off mute? Sorry, I'm trying to watch. My question, I think, to add on to that embedded piece, I think it's such an important part of this, right? So, we have courses, schools have been working with that. Like you have your workplace learning experience course, called here in Illinois, which is formerly like co-op, right? But the embedded, like one for schools who want to track, like what is happening among pathways, what students are accessing and what are not, right? I'm curious about your comment before where it's by course and not section level. And just curious if you know what schools are doing, right, to get teachers to team around that. The school that I taught at was like our biology class. We all did the same thing in the same order because we had students kind of transferring in and out, but that was a difficult process, right? To get everybody to reach consensus on kind of what that course looks like or what that embedded experience looks like. So I'm just curious what schools might be doing to maintain that curricular integrity. If you say it's embedded, it is really embedded in every single section by every single teacher. Curious on your thoughts there.
Yeah, so we have something called area education agencies here in our state. that are providing a lot of regional support. So they have different teams that are connecting in to really have these intentional conversations and talking about, well, what is the barrier and why does this one section or two sections not have it, but these sections do? Is it because we're not sharing information? Is there some other barrier that we need to address? So I would say that we are truly in the conversational stage of how do we create more consistency? But again, sending the message that this is not a section level, check the box type of thing. We really want this to be data with an integrity piece component. So take the time, figure it out, and then report it because it's not required, but it does provide a good picture. And it's also created some really good local conversations. Does this make sense here? Maybe the reason why these two sections aren't doing it is because it doesn't make sense. And it's maybe not part of the curriculum and maybe it needs to come back to that. So for the most part, those have been local conversations that we've been working with AEAs to really facilitate and help them overcome barriers if there are barriers present. But again, going back to that team approach, who knows about this? Are we all on the same page? Is this duplicating pieces? Can we streamline this? Is there a way we can bring in multiple different courses and have different approaches to it? So I would say that we're still in the very beginning stages of efficiencies and consistencies, but that is the consistent message that we're sending is it needs to be the same for all students. Mm-hmm.
No, it's awesome. It's really exciting work. Sorry, I'm in a room that keeps the lights keep turning off on me. Over at Triton College today, but yeah, I think it's just so helpful for, the tracking purposes and the embedded, the equity and access component. And also, for these pathway teams to have conversations about what's happening in our pathway, right? If we've got really robust career exploration happening in an intro course, but then they don't do any problem-based learning later, and then suddenly they're doing internships, there's a gap there, right? So it becomes this whole kind of pathway team conversation that the data can really highlight. So I just really appreciate the embedded focus.
And part of the embedded conversation that we're having too is taking advantage of the opportunities that you have and really building on those. So for example, it's pretty common in an upper elementary grade to have the students go down and read to the younger students or to listen to the younger students read. That's great. There's an opportunity for us to talk about a career in education that we're missing out on to really inspire future educators. We've just relied very heavily on kind of traditionally, you have a great experience, you want to become a teacher. So what if now we prompt that to really talk to fifth graders, for example, about here's a reading strategy to help with comprehension or something really simple that they probably have already learned, but to help relay and enhance the experience. They go and read to the younger students, and then afterwards we have some sort of school official or school leader come and talk to that fifth grade class about why they love being a teacher, why they love working in that district, and hopefully inspire and encourage them to consider a future in education. There's a small opportunity there that we can take to be really intentional to inspire students to be interested in that career. And then the follow-up could be maybe something that they enjoyed about the experience or something that they learned. Again, just having students pause and reflect, what does this mean for me? Another example that we've talked about embedding and using what you already have. We found through Perkins data collection that a lot of students by the time they're in seventh grade are choosing careers that are high money, that they perceive to be high money, not necessarily service-oriented careers. And we're seeing a deficit in a lot of different career paths, but why not be really intentional about that? So one of the service careers, and I know I had the picture on the firefighters, is we have Fire Safety Day, where in first grade, I think usually maybe even sometimes in kindergarten, you have the firefighters come and be like, I'm not scary. Stop, drop, and roll. Here's what to do. But what if the day before they came, or maybe an hour before they came, the teacher read a book on what it means to be a firefighter, and then asked students to come up with a question that they were really curious about to ask while they're there, and still engage in all the fire safety. That all still needs to happen. And then afterwards, maybe they draw a picture of themselves in a firefighting suit or something related to it, and they practice writing a sentence because they're already doing that, but we could just tie it back to this. What a great way to get students to just really pause and think about, oh, there's a career related to that.
I just think it's all ties together, right? If you're having conversations about embedded, then because you're going to plan better for that embedded course and teachers are more aware of like what's embedded, then you can do more of the pre and the post activities and align it to your curriculum, right? So it all, I think that can be an issue too, right? Is sometimes teachers are unaware that, oh, there's a field trip today because there was a whole other team coordinating it. And I think there's a lot of teachers who would love to do that pre and post and really tie to curriculum. And agree with Jennifer's comment, right? Like we can be promoting education in so many different ways in light touch and bigger ways, all throughout a student's experience. Teacher shortage is for real, and something we can be a lot more thoughtful about.
My colleague, Erica Wood-Schmitz, who is a phenomenal former counselor, came up with a whole list of reflection opportunities for district career and academic plans, just some general simple ideas. All of these will probably ring true for educators like, oh, I already know how to do that, or already that's part of how I operate as a teacher. It's just making sure we're bridging the connection that work-based learning is just another form of really preparing and supporting student learning and engagement. So
I'm curious how many of you, when you heard the piece about the national SCED codes, how those might be something you're already using and could engage in, or if you're like, oh,
And I could do a whole nother hour talking about the value of the language and the words we use to convey the type of experience. So I think that's a whole nother level. But again, finding a starting point is the key. And everybody's at different parts. I mean, because it may be that many of you are already doing a lot of this stuff. So it's just, where are we at? Where are we headed? What do we want to do?
Absolutely. And for those of you thinking about those college and career pathway endorsements, like Kristy had shared, they've kind of taken like career exploration and defined what is a job shadow, what are those fairs, what's a site visit. We still kind of have a general definition for career exploration that can encompass a variety of things, but we do have those definitions along the continuum to lean on to, align your initial conversations and your inventory and your labeling. And also for those of you who do continue to wonder, how do we track what students are on track to earn the endorsement or what students will earn the endorsements, have earned, right? Putting these embedded within a course and then labeling them really explicitly with career exploration, team-based challenge, right? Career development experience in there. Again, it's an equity piece to have it embedded, and it's also a helpful tracking piece that you could look at their transcript, right? You could pull info from their transcript and know where they are at on their endorsement process. Well, Kristy, I appreciate you so much. I think there's just, I would love like an Illinois dashboard that looks like yours one day, TBD, but that would be very, very cool. But just really appreciate you and the thoughtfulness here. We'll be engaging too with you all kind of on an advisory committee this next year, really building out and having even more of that high quality criteria here within Illinois, similar to some pieces that Iowa has. So just excited to continue to learn from you as we really get more explicit in that journey, and appreciate you sharing today.